A wall of water erupts from the surface of a still Georgia marsh, and in less than half a second, an entire scene changes forever. One moment, a great blue heron stands motionless in the shallows, a living statue with its neck coiled like a spring, eyes locked on a fish drifting lazily beneath the surface. The next moment, something colossal and unseen launches from the mud below, jaws wide open, and the water becomes a battlefield. This is not a rare accident. This is a war that has been fought in the swamps, marshes, and slow-moving rivers of North America for millions of years. A war so quiet that most people walking along a boardwalk trail would never even notice it happening just a few feet away. By the time you finish watching this, you will understand why biologists consider the meeting point between a snapping turtle and a great blue heron to be one of the most dangerous, most misunderstood rivalries in the entire wetland ecosystem, and you will never look at a peaceful pond the same way again. If you enjoy this kind of content, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Both of these animals are hunters. Both of these animals are patient beyond anything a human could tolerate. And both of these animals are, at different moments in their lives, either the predator or the prey of the other, depending on size, timing, and a single mistake. This is the story of two ambush specialists who share the same hunting ground, chase the same food, and occasionally turn their weapons on each other. To understand why this rivalry exists at all, you first have to understand what a snapping turtle actually is, because most people picture something slow, harmless, and almost comically outdated. A leftover from prehistoric times that just shuffles along the bottom of a pond eating algae. That image could not be further from the truth. The common snapping turtle, Chelydra serpentina, is one of the most efficient ambush predators in freshwater North America, and its larger cousin, the alligator snapping turtle, Macrochelys teminki, found mostly in the rivers and bayous of the southeastern United States, is even more extreme. An adult common snapping turtle can weigh over 35 pounds, while the alligator snapping turtle, the largest freshwater turtle species on the continent, can exceed 200 pounds, with a shell alone stretching past 30 inches. Their jaws generate a bite force that has been measured at well over 300 pounds per square inch in larger individuals, enough force to shear through bone, snap a broomstick in half, and, according to multiple documented cases from wildlife rehabilitators, sever a human finger down to the joint in a single strike. But the true weapon of the snapping turtle is not just its bite, it is its patience. These animals can remain completely motionless, buried in mud and silt, with only their nostrils breaking the surface, for hours at a time, sometimes going as long as 45 minutes without surfacing to breathe at all, thanks to a specialized ability to absorb oxygen through tissue in their throat and cloaca during colder, low-activity periods. To a fish, a frog, or a wading bird standing in shallow water, a snapping turtle is functionally invisible until the exact instant it decides not to be. Now picture the other side of this equation. The great blue heron, Ardea herodias, is the largest heron species in North America, standing up to 4.5 feet tall with a wingspan that can reach 6 feet across. It is one of the most widespread and successful wading birds on the continent, found from the swamps of Florida to the riverbanks of Alaska, and its hunting method is built entirely around stillness and a single explosive strike. A heron will stand in shallow water for what can be 20 minutes or more without moving a muscle, its long S-curved neck cocked and ready until a fish, crayfish, frog, or small mammal comes within range. Then, in roughly 1/50th of a second, the neck uncoils and the dagger-like beak drives forward with enough speed and precision to spear or grab prey before it even registers the threat. Great blue herons are not picky eaters. Studies of their diet across wetland habitats show they will take almost anything that fits down their throat, including small turtles, snakes, ducklings, and even young muskrats, and there are well-documented photographed cases of herons attempting to swallow prey far too large for them, sometimes with fatal results for the bird itself. This is where the real friction begins, because both of these animals are competing directly for the same shallow water hunting grounds, and, very often, the exact same fish. In marshes across the American South and along the wetlands of the Midwest, Great blue herons and snapping turtles frequently occupy the same stretch of shoreline, sometimes within a few feet of each other, both waiting for the same school of minnows or the same unlucky bullfrog to surface. Wildlife photographers and researchers stationed at wetland preserves have documented repeated encounters where a heron wading through shallow water suddenly finds itself standing directly above a submerged snapping turtle. And in more than one recorded incident, the outcome was violent and immediate. The danger runs in both directions, and which animal has the advantage depends almost entirely on size and age. A fully grown alligator snapping turtle is more than capable of preying on an adult great blue heron. Its hunting strategy for fish, an open pink worm-like lure on the floor of its mouth that wiggles to attract curious prey directly into its jaws, is not something a heron typically encounters. But the ambush strike that follows any disturbance in the water is exactly the kind of threat a wading bird faces every time it steps into turtle territory. Multiple confirmed accounts from wildlife rehabilitation centers and state park rangers describe herons found with catastrophic leg injuries consistent with a snapping turtle bite, the turtle's crushing jaws having clamped onto a leg mid-stride while the bird was focused entirely on the water ahead of it rather than beneath it. In several of these cases, the heron survived the initial attack, but the leg injury proved fatal within days due to infection or the inability to hunt effectively afterward. There are also credible reports, corroborated by more than one wetland biologist working in the southeast, of full-grown snapping turtles successfully dragging down and drowning smaller wading birds, including juvenile herons and egrets, by clamping onto a leg or wing and pulling the bird beneath the surface until it can no longer resist. For an ambush predator built to overpower fish, turtles, and even small mammals with a single decisive strike, a distracted heron standing still in shallow water is, unfortunately for the bird, an almost perfect target. But the relationship is far from one-sided, and this is where most people are surprised to learn just how vulnerable young snapping turtles actually are. While an adult turtle is a genuine threat to a heron, a hatchling or juvenile snapping turtle, freshly emerged from its nest and barely the size of a bottle cap, is exactly the kind of easy, high-protein meal a great blue heron actively seeks out. Nest predation studies conducted at freshwater turtle nesting sites across the eastern United States have repeatedly identified wading birds, herons included, as significant predators of both turtle eggs when nests are exposed by raccoons or other diggers, and of hatchlings making their vulnerable first journey from the nest to open water. A newly hatched snapping turtle has a soft, still-forming shell that offers nowhere near the protection of an adult's armor, and a heron's spear-like beak can pierce that shell with ease. Photographs and field notes from herpetologists monitoring turtle nesting beaches describe herons stationing themselves near known nesting areas during hatching season, essentially turning the emergence of an entire clutch of baby turtles into a feeding opportunity. In this version of the story, the turtle is not the terrifying ambush predator at all. It is simply prey, and a fast, precise heron strike is often the last thing it ever experiences. This dynamic, where the exact same two species can be predator or prey to each other depending entirely on the size and age of the individuals involved, is what makes the relationship between snapping turtles and great blue herons so fascinating to biologists who study wetland food webs. It is not a simple hierarchy where one species always dominates the other. It is a shifting balance that depends on where each individual is standing, how old it is, how hungry it is, and how much attention it is paying to the water around it. A heron that successfully avoids adult turtles for its entire adult life might still lose its own eggs if it nests near the water to a different threat entirely, while the very same turtle species it has learned to avoid as an adult may have provided it with an easy meal decades earlier, when that turtle was small enough to fit inside the bird's beak. The habitats where these encounters happen most frequently tell you a great deal about why this rivalry exists at all. Shallow, still, or slow-moving freshwater, marshes, the edges of ponds, backwater sloughs, and the calm margins of rivers are exactly the conditions both species need to hunt effectively. A heron needs water shallow enough to wade in, but calm enough to see and strike accurately at prey. A snapping turtle needs water with enough vegetation, mud, or debris to hide in while it waits, along with a steady supply of fish, frogs, and other small animals passing through. These are not two species that happen to overlap by accident. They are two species independently drawn, generation after generation, to the exact same narrow strip of habitat because it offers the best hunting conditions available in a freshwater wetland. Wherever you find one of these predators thriving, you are statistically far more likely to find the other nearby as well, which is precisely why so many documented conflicts between them have occurred at well-studied wetland preserves where researchers happen to already be watching. What makes a snapping turtle such a uniquely dangerous neighbor, beyond its raw physical power, is how completely it defies a heron's usual threat detection. Herons rely almost entirely on sight and movement to judge danger, scanning the water's surface and shoreline for anything that shifts, ripples, or moves unexpectedly, and a turtle already lying in wait gives off none of those signals. The strike itself, when it finally comes, covers only a short distance. But that short distance is more than enough when the target is a bird's foot or lower leg, standing just inches from a hidden set of jaws capable of clamping shut in a fraction of a second. Unlike a fish darting away or a snake slithering through grass, the turtle offers no warning behavior at all. And that absence of warning is precisely why it remains one of the very few predators capable of genuinely surprising an animal as visually sharp and naturally cautious as a great blue heron. On the other side, a heron's advantages in this rivalry come from tools a turtle simply does not have. Flight is the most obvious one. The instant a heron senses danger, whether from a snapping turtle strike that narrowly misses or simply a suspicious disturbance in the mud nearby, it can be airborne within a second or two, something no turtle, however powerful, has any way of countering. Herons also possess extraordinarily sharp binocular vision, adapted for spotting movement both on the surface and just beneath it, allowing experienced adult birds to sometimes detect the faint outline of a submerged turtle before stepping directly over it, a skill that almost certainly develops through experience, and, in many cases, through the survival of a close call earlier in the bird's life. And unlike a snapping turtle, which must physically overpower or ambush its prey at close range, a heron's spear strike can be launched from a distance, meaning it never has to place itself directly within a turtle's striking range unless it misjudges depth or gets distracted by a fish just out of easy reach, which, based on the documented attack cases, appears to be exactly how most heron injuries actually happen. Zoos, wildlife rescue centers, and wetland researchers who have spent years observing these interactions generally agree on one thing: neither species treats the other as a primary food source or a primary threat under normal circumstances. Fish remains the overwhelming majority of both a heron's and an adult turtle's diet. The conflicts that do occur tend to happen opportunistically when hunger, proximity, and a moment of poor timing line up all at once, rather than through any kind of deliberate, sustained rivalry. But opportunistic or not, when those moments do happen, the outcome can be brutal, permanent, and, for the smaller or less experienced animal involved, fatal. What this rivalry ultimately reveals is something much larger about how freshwater ecosystems actually function beneath their calm, quiet surface. A marsh that looks completely still to a hiker walking past it is, in reality, a battlefield operating in extreme slow motion, where two of the most patient, most specialized predators on the continent are constantly circling the same narrow strip of shallow water, each one capable of killing the other under the right conditions, and each one, at some stage of its life, vulnerable to exactly the kind of attack it might deliver to something smaller later on. The snapping turtle does not fear much in its environment as an adult, but a well-placed heron strike during its first vulnerable weeks of life can end everything before it truly begins. The great blue heron does not fear much either, gliding confidently over its wetland domain, but one miscalculated step in the wrong patch of mud can be the last step it ever takes. Neither species holds a permanent crown in this rivalry. The balance shifts constantly, shaped by size, age, hunger, and the simple, unpredictable geometry of who happens to be standing exactly where the other one is hiding. And that, more than anything else, is what makes the wetlands of North America one of the most quietly dangerous places in the entire animal kingdom. not because of roaring confrontations or dramatic chases across open ground, but because of two motionless hunters, separated by nothing more than a few inches of murky water, each one waiting for the other to make a single, fatal mistake. If you made it this far, subscribe to the channel and leave a like so you don't miss the next videos.